Well, you Roten Show listeners know this man's voice. He has been a long-time guest on the Roten Show when I've had a chance to guest host, and a dear, dear friend. He is the host. I consider him the host of the Unashamed podcast. He is the ringleader. He called himself the Beard Wrangler at one time, and now he's got a beard. You would follow him on Twitter at BeardlessBro. But it's my dear buddy Al Robertson joining us here this morning. Al, what's going on? How you doing?
Doing great, Brian. It's always good to be with you, brother. Yeah, my beard, Dad said recently, he's like, Al, I mean, I'm looking at you and the white in your beard, and you're making me feel old. And I was like, Dad, do they not have mirrors in your house? Because when I look at you, you're making me feel old. So that's where we are with white beards at this time. I'm glad we're on radio, so your audience it doesn't have to look at it.
Well, and you know, I don't have quite the beard you've got, nor your brother, nor your dad. I was talking to a guy I go to church with now in Huntington a couple of weeks ago, and I said, your thread count is looking good. Of course, I got thread count from you because,
Yep.
you know, when I would see a beard, I would text you a picture and say, hey, does this meet approval? So your thread count's looking good, bud.
Oh, let me tell you, whenever I'm on the road and somebody comes up and they've obviously been growing it out, and it's a big, thick one, you know, and they're proud of it, you know, especially, you know, following our family. And that's my line to them. And you ought to see their chest poke out when I say, dude, what? You got a thread count working there. That's impressive. You could be one of our family members. And I mean, they can't hardly get out the door. Their head gets so big. So yeah, that's my line to, you know, because people love beards, you know, they really do. And some people have elaborate beards. I mean, it's amazing to see the work they put into them. So I'm about to probably cut mine down. This is way too long for her. She hadn't been happy, but to be honest with you, I've just been busy, Brian. So it's easy for me to fall into the let yourself go category of my family. I wish I could do it, but unfortunately I'm married to a woman that won't let me. So
no, got to keep that thing trimmed, bud. You got to keep it well. And listen, you work with the guys from My Pillow. They're all about thread count. So you guys could bring them as a sponsor for the Unashamed podcast. Let's talk about the Unashamed podcast. You guys had a big award a couple weeks ago. K Love, who is big in Christian music, had a People's Choice Award for podcast. And the Unashamed podcast won their Podcast of the Year award. Take me a little bit and take the listeners behind the scenes to that. Obviously, you went, your dad went, Missy and Jase went, your cousin Zach, who's a contributor to the podcast and a producer as well. It was a real family affair. But how did all that come about for you guys?
Well, you know, they notify you and tell you you're up, and of course, obviously they want you to come. And of course, to be honest, our first instinct was, oh man, I wish we knew whether we were going to win or not, because it's hard to get us all to go someplace. But obviously, you can't know that. And Sadie had actually won this same award last year for her podcast, so it was really neat to us that our family got recognized. Two of our podcasts got recognized back-to-back years. But it's a big deal. I mean, K-Love is huge. You know, the concert they did that night, which later aired on TBN, I think, was really amazing. I mean, just being there and listening to those artists was incredible. And, you know, like someone mentioned that night, it's really neat, like in the spiritual world, that you can have now podcast and entertainment, because the Chosen won as well for their category. And just, you know, in books, you know, there were a lot of authors there that had books that had impacted people. And Shannon Bream, you know, from Fox News was there, and with her book. And so it's just really neat that all the different mediums that are recognized. So we were very humbled by it all. I mean, it was a big deal. It was, you know, it was Grand Ole Opry, sold out. I mean, a lot of fans there, and then a lot of entertainers and people that are, you know, in that world. And so, it was great. We managed to even get Dad to go. So it was me, Dad, and Jase. Lisa and Missy were there, and then Jase's family lives in Nashville, so his sons joined us, and so it was a really cool evening. We were surprised, but also gratified, and we feel like the award is really for our listeners, because, you know, they're the ones that make it possible. I mean, we do feel humbled and feel good that our work is recognized, but it's really for our listeners, and they're the ones that rallied and voted for us. And so we were up against some really good quality podcasts too. So, great honor. Very, very humbled about it.
And you guys have really worked hard. I mean, I've been following the podcast, and you and I have talked off and on through the genesis of it. It really kind of started as an offshoot of, hey, let's get Dad and Jase and I together to talk about the Bible. And I've told people that ask me about you, you're one of those guys that can talk about anything. You and I sat in your living room on Halloween night and talked football and a bunch of different things. And you're just that kind of good as a host. You can take a conversation anywhere you want to go. What's been the most surprising thing? Because you guys are now probably pushing 750 episodes. You do about 3 or 4 a week. What's been the most surprising thing to you about the podcast? Either the way it's grown or the success of it, or just something you didn't think would be an offshoot of what you guys are doing?
Well, I think I knew that we had to, from my past experiences with other family members that had gotten into podcasting. Willie and Corey Willie was one of the first ones in way back when the show was still going on. I think he did it for Fox News and their podcast stable. But I knew just from being a guest on theirs and kind of watching that unfold that if you were going to do this long term, content wise, you really had to have something solid. And it's kind of like what you guys do with talk radio, and that's kind of what I, through my years, that's what I loved. And you have to have strong content to go hours per week. And of course, most people do it with current events and guests. But in our case, we weren't going to focus there, although we do that from time to time. But we had to have something, and so we're all Bible guys, and so I think that became the core. And I thought, well, as long as we stick with the Bible as our primary roadmap of our content, we'll never run out of stuff to talk about. Because number one, Jase is never going to run out of stories. He is an endless wellspring of hyperbolic stories. And so that's what he does. And God bless him, because, without him, the podcast would not be nearly as interesting. And then, we all have a way about us in conversation, as you described, and Jason Dad shared that with me as well. And I'm kind of like a traffic cop or a, air traffic controller, just trying to kind of keep us on the rails. But, what I've loved about it, to tell you the truth about it, I mean, I'm comfortable with Bible study. We all three are, and Zach is as well. So when we're all four on there together, it's enriching. And so one of the things that I think I didn't plan on was how much I would learn in the process of doing this, because, I'm also sitting at the feet of three guys that are really sharp in the Bible. So it's not just what I can contribute, but what I can take away from it. And I've learned a lot. And so it's helped me in my preaching and my teaching outside of the podcast. And the second thing I've really enjoyed is, being able to have a lot of diverse guests on and talk about a lot of different things. And some of that's our family, with our wives, and those conversations will go in a different direction, and it's good because our audience loves it. This past week, Jase has been promoting in New York, promoting his Fox Nation show, Duck Family Treasure. And so he wasn't there for a couple of podcasts. And so we had some guests on. A couple of them were local guys. One of them was my cousin, John, who hadn't been on yet. And another was a guy who does a men's ministry in North Carolina. But it was just really still super interesting. Zach and Jase weren't there, but Dad and I kind of carried it with those guys. And it was just really good. So I think the diversity of it all has been a good thing to talk about, both our culture, what's going on, community, among believers, but also just even political stuff too. So we kind of had a wide range to be able to talk about, which has been a good thing.
Well, you guys are in a sense almost doing a daily show, right? Because this program is 15 hours a week live, 5 days a week, 3 hours a day, and you guys are probably putting that much time in to podcasting every week. Give folks a little bit inside baseball, if you will. You're being a lifelong Dodger fan, I being a lifelong. By the way, I sent you for folks to listen.
I knew you were going to bring this up.
So I sent Al a text last week when the Dodgers were playing the Reds, and it just so happened, of course, News Radio 800 WVHU, the home of the Reds. The Reds bring up Ellie De La Cruz. And the second game in, he hit, he hit about he hit a ball that's probably still traveling over Cincinnati, it's probably made it to Columbus by now. But no, Al's
Well,
a
it was
big time
really
Dodger fan.
It was really interesting because obviously the Dodgers are not quite as strong as they've been the last few years this year, but they're still good. And yeah, that series was fantastic. I got to watch two of the games on DirecTV, but then I listened to one because I was traveling. So I actually got your Reds broadcast guys, and because you're whoever's the home team usually is the broadcast
Yeah.
team. It was really interesting. And this kid that you guys have, I mean, amazing. Like just watching him, you can tell he's different. He's got a different gear. And someone mentioned on one of the broadcasts, I don't know if it's the Dodgers or the Reds, that it's kind of the feeling like when Griffey and some of those, like, really once upon a generation guys come up, and when you're watching them, and so you never know how they're going to turn out. But he's an amazing player, and it's fun to have a team where you get a guy that everybody else in the league is talking about. And so it's certainly that way with the Reds. And you guys got us 2 out of 3. So hats off to the Reds. It looks like there's some good future stuff coming for Reds fans.
Yeah, but the Dodgers still going to make the playoffs and probably going to go deep. But no, what I was talking about, kind of behind the scenes with the Unashamed podcast is, people just see the finished product, Al. They see the what you guys release on YouTube or Blaze TV or wherever you get your podcasts. They see the finished product, but you guys really put a lot of work and study and things like that into it. As the guy that's kind of driving the bus, what's your goal for each show? Are you just trying to, as you mentioned a minute ago, keep it on the rails? Or do you go, hey, I'd like for us to hit on this, and this, and if we go in different directions, it's okay. Do you kind of have a plan for each show, or are you just kind of going, okay, guys, I'm going to bring something up, we'll go with it? Because it feels like that is the authenticity of the Unashamed podcast. Is that really what's going on, or how is it?
Yeah, you got it. I mean, and you listened, so you kind of get our approach. I would call it planned chaos is probably the best way to describe it. It is planned out. We do a lot of prep because we're basically doing 4 hours a week, and we record those 2 on Monday and 2 on Tuesday, so we're a little bit different than you guys and others in terms of the dailies, but we're never more than a week out on what we're talking about, which is good because we try to deal with current things that are happening obviously in our world and culture. But yeah, so we have a plan going in. We have show notes. This is kind of where we're going to aim towards today. But what I learned early on is if Dad or Jase or even Zach come in and they've been moved by something else or some story or something gets us going, that I never try to stop it to get to the plan, because sometimes the thread that gets pulled is great and super interesting. So part of my job is to figure that out. And it took a while sometimes, because like Dad would be like, are we going to get back to what we're supposed to be talking about? I said, no, we're talking about whatever we want to, Dad. So we got the rest of our life to talk about what we're talking about. So yeah, I try to stay loose to where people are. And it could be a story, or who knows where we might go. We had Si on this past week, and I mean, I had a plan in place of what we were going to do, but Si demolished that plan.
Well, you had to, because of Si. I mean, you knew that it was going to go off the rails pretty quickly.
Exactly. And all I did was I knew we had an out time when we had to move on to something else, and so I was like, okay, good luck with that. But we laughed. It was so much fun. So I try to let the chaos be the chaos, but also, a lot of prep goes in, a lot of planning. And we all the 4 of us kind of approach it ourselves, and then we don't know what the other has discovered. And so I think part of the audience enjoys that we discover that together. So, it could be some salient point that I have from a text, or maybe Dad or Jase, and then that comes out, and then we react off of that. So it works. I think it works well because the conversational style and the fact that we're family. So, we don't mind throwing each other under the bus from time to time and have fun with that. So the audience gets to do that with us. And I think I tell people, it's like if you were to show up at Dad's house, especially when we were younger, and we were sitting around having a discussion about the Bible, it's like you're listening in on that discussion as a podcast listener, because that's the way we grew up.
Well, and here's the thing too. It speaks to how America still loves your family.
Yeah.
you guys haven't done a Duck Dynasty in what, since 2016 was the last
Yeah.
episode.
17 was our
17
last.
was, so that's 6 years, Al, and
Yeah.
America still wants to consume what the Robertsons have produced. And speaking of content that is coming soon from the Robertsons, really excited, and that's why I wanted to have you on today to talk to the folks, because it still is a couple months out, but you guys can already start to get the trailer for the movie that's releasing September 28th. And by the way, I checked, and it is going to be releasing in Barbersville at the Huntington Mall at Cinemark. So our tri-state area listeners are going to be able to go and watch The Blind in Barbersville. We're going to have it at our cinema in Huntington. But Al, talk to me about the movie The Blind. What kind of led to this? I mean, there have been other things that you guys have done. You've done a lot of the I Am Seconds. You've done a lot of things about the backstory of the family. What made you guys take on a movie project?
Well, it was kind of born out of, Willie and Corey are kind of our family emissaries, I would call them. I mean, they're the ones that really were responsible for us having Dynasty on the air. And they're still looking for ways to create great content, whether it be movies or television or podcasting or whatever. And so they got with Zach and just thought, we had a script idea for a movie about mom and dad's early life, because most people that follow our family know about Duck Commander and know about we built this family business, and everything you basically learned from the show, and especially reading our books. What a lot of people don't know much about is mom and dad's early life, and a little bit of it's been talked about maybe in a couple of books, but I mean, not a lot. And obviously this is the years before dad became a Christian. And so the movie really explores their relationship. It also goes back to their childhood. There was a lot of childhood trauma on both sides, which shaped a lot of their issues that they had as young adults. And, they were teenagers who found out they were pregnant, and how do we move forward? And I was that, that baby. So there were a lot of stuff from that era of our life. And of course, I was 10 years old when dad finally became a Christian. And so I remember these things well. And so just me, I still haven't seen the film. We're about to see it in about a week or two for the first time, an actual preview, because they finally got a final cut. And a few people in the family have seen it, but dad and mom and I haven't. And so we're going to get to see that coming up. So, but just me watching the trailers that I've seen and a few clips that we've gotten together and watched a time or two, I've been moved to tears every time. Of course, I lived it.
Yeah.
So there's some expectation of that, but it's really well done. I think I was talking to Dallas Jenkins at the K-Level Awards, and we were talking about how the high quality of faith films and faith television is now everywhere. And we talked about our project, and it's really well done. The actors were fantastic. There were three actors that played mom and dad from a child, a teenager, and then also as young adults. And half of them were Brits, which is really amazing that they could capture what they did. So I think folks are going to be moved by it. I think it's going to be a good evangelistic opportunity for maybe people that you've been trying to talk to about the Lord, but not quite sure, can't get them to a church building, which a lot of people are leery of that. So it is a good opportunity for that. Dad was very trepidatious, I think would be a fair word to say for him, because he says, he's embarrassed to an extent about having his life, the parts he's not proud of on a movie screen, but he also knows that really makes you appreciate the man he became, and of course mom and her ability to hang in there. So I think people are going to love it. I think it's going to be I think it's going to be a good thing faith wise, but I think it's also just a really good project and a good picture.
And here's the thing that is it's intriguing to me. First of all, when you said British actors, I was thinking, boy, there's a language barrier there, especially when they're coming to Louisiana and Arkansas and Mississippi to film.
Yeah.
There's got to be a language. Did you find yourself playing part translator to some degree, Al? I mean,
well, they were, they're really good at what they do, and it's kind of surreal when you're talking to somebody when the cameras aren't rolling and they're a Brit, and of course, it was funny because mom was like, "Did they learn how to speak American?" I said, I said, "Well, mom, it's called English, and we all speak the same language." But uh, yes, they did. They did learn our mannerisms or your mannerisms and how to do that properly. There was a little actor, little 10-year-old actor from the Houston area that played me in the film, and so I still hadn't seen it, so I don't know how many lines that he had, but I was able to get on a Zoom call with him before they started filming and talk to him and just, tell him a little bit about myself and the era of that he was portraying in the film. And so he told me he had been listening to people from East Texas to try to talk like me. So we'll see how well that came out.
Well, yeah, the dialects are similar. By the way, the person that plays Phil in the movie is Aaron Von Andrian, if I'm saying that right. He was in the new Indiana Jones movie, so big time talent. And then Amelia Eve plays Miss Kay. She's been on some Netflix stuff. She's on Leopard Skin that's streaming now on Peacock, and got somebody that plays Uncle Si, Aaron Dahlia Villa. See, I can't talk. It's hillbilly. I mean, those are big words. But tell me this: when you first hearing about the movie project, I don't know whether Zach approached you or Willie approached you, but you're hearing about it for the first time, and of course, you and Zach. You guys have a production company together where you produce not only the Unashamed podcast, but the Duck Call Room that has your son-in-law Jay and Martin that you would remember from Duck Dynasty and Godwin and Size on there as well too. But the first time that you're hearing about the project, what some of the thoughts that went through your mind, Al?
Well, my first reaction was extreme pride, and I was all about it because I tend to look at our family as because I guess because I'm the oldest, and so kind of the family historian. And whether it's a television show or in this case a movie, I feel very humbled that the movie would even be made, about your family and about your parents. And this is something that'll be around long after I'm gone. And and this, of course, they came to me, as you can imagine, Brian, because our family and the dynamics, because I'm the beard whisperer. And so they came to me with Dad because I'm especially good with him because, they weren't sure how excited Dad was going to be about the project. And he really wasn't, in the sense that, as I said earlier. But, I told him, I said, Dad, do you realize how there's been billions of people that have lived on this planet since it was here and since humanity was here? And do you realize how many movies have been made about a person in their life?
Yeah.
Not many. You're in a very small percentage. You either had to do something really, really bad or really, really good, or maybe a combination of both to wind up, in a biopic about your life.
Yeah.
So I said, this is to me, that was my idea initially. It was a huge honor just for it to be done. And even if it never made it to theaters or whatever, I always knew it would be done. It would be done well because I knew the folks that were doing it. And I thought it's something we'll have forever. I mean, my great grandchildren will be able to look back and watch a movie about their great grandpa. And I've heard stories about Dad's great grandparents, and my grandmother used to tell me all these stories. And so I have all these images in my mind of what they were like, but that's all they are. But in this case, there's actually going to be a motion picture that tells the story. So it's a huge, I viewed it as a huge honor just for that to even be made.
Well, there's a couple things that I know about your dynamic with your dad. Is that, number one, you kind of sell him on ideas that promote the gospel because you know that's near and dear to his heart. And I'm not saying that negatively. You just know that hot button about your dad. If it's an opportunity to share the gospel of Jesus, he's going to take advantage of that if he feels like it's right. And the second thing is, you're exactly right. And I saw a video a couple years ago, and it moved me, but it just made me just well up, because your granddaughter Carly, her great granddad, your dad, baptized her, and that was who she wanted to baptize her. And so when you talk about that generational thing, you're living it right now with your grandkids who are teenagers, and your dad and mom, who are still very much alive and well and very much involved in their great grandchildren's lives.
Yeah, and I'm assuming, I don't know this, you could probably tell me, but since my dealings of coming to West Virginia and back, our cultures are similar in the sense that we marry young and we raise our families together. We're very clannish in terms of our families being close by. And so there's a good chance. I mean, my granddaughter you mentioned is 17, and she'll probably marry young, like all of us did generationally. We were all married by the time we were 20 or 21, including mom and dad. And so there's a good chance that, you know, there'll even be 5 generations of us alive together on the planet. And you're right, that matters a lot to us. And I realize that can be done not in the right way, but when it's done the right way, especially spiritual guidance, it can be a wonderful thing. And so I'm very sensitive to that, sort of being the person in the middle of all of it.
Well, I read a Fox News story here not so long ago that there was a lady in eastern Kentucky, not far from our listening audience, 96 years old, and she had great grandchildren.
There you go.
So, I mean, hey, anything's possible. And your dad takes good care of himself. You know, your dad takes good care of himself, and your mom takes good care of herself. So, yeah, you're right, Al. I think it's a good possibility. When folks and folks can find the trailer right now, it's available. You can watch the trailer, sign up for the email list that you have, and we'll do that here in a couple minutes. But what do you think is a big takeaway that folks, and I know you haven't seen it yet, but you've seen bits and pieces of it. What are folks that are fans of the Robertsons, fans of Duck Dynasty, fans of Unashamed, what are they going to come away with the movie understanding that maybe they didn't understand about your family before?
Well, I hope they come away with an appreciation of what God can do to change someone. And because the movie, from what I've heard and what little I've seen, I mean, it accurately depicts that my dad was not a good person at all. I mean, and he has admitted that through the years. Of course, you know, we one of your shows we did in the past, we talked about my sister that came out of that era that none of us knew was there. Well, that came out because he was, you know, cheating on mom this whole time. So a lot of difficulty, but I hope people will appreciate the power of a changed life and really what commitment does to a new way and a new pathway can do. And I also hope they really appreciate mom and her willingness to fight for her husband and her family in a powerful way in a difficult circumstance. Because I know there's a lot of families out there that struggle, certainly in our culture. And I know you guys deal a lot with the political and other side of what's happening in our culture. But I'm telling you, these are tough times. And so to see this family that a lot of people respect and appreciate for their Christian stance and who they are, to see the birthplace of that and kind of where it all came from and some of the difficulties that were overcome, I think that'll be something that's really uplifting to folks. And so that's my hope for it. And of course, some people will be shocked because they're like, oh, I didn't realize he was that bad. But at the same time, I think if you look at it for what can be changed and done, it makes you appreciate it.
Well, it's the power of Jesus. It is the power of Jesus changing the most vile, the blood of Jesus changing the most vile sinner and making them holy before him and doing great things. Hey, in the last couple minutes I got, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, how you feeling about your LSU Tigers coming into college football season?
Oh man, I'm excited about it. We also have in the World Series this year, so this is as our people say down in Louisiana, it's a good time to be a Tiger. Yeah, I have high hopes, but I do every year going in. But the last 3 or 4 have been kind of realism entering in as well. But I feel like the Kelly hire is turning out to be a good one. And so I think he's building a solid program. So, yeah, we have high expectations. Of course, it may all fall flat if we blow a game against Florida State again. So
yeah,
you just have to see where you land.
Well, I'm laughing because, you know, the little inside there, Al shared this last year when he was on that I'm the guy that broke the Brian Kelly hire to him via text message. So I thought that was kind of funny. But
do you remember what I said? I said, who? Is that the guy that was at Oregon?
Yeah. Yeah, you
I
thought it
wasn't
was
even
Chip
sure.
Kelly. Yeah, you
Yeah,
thought you
I wasn't
guys had
even sure
hired
who it
you
was.
guys. You thought you'd hired Chip Kelly. No, it's Brian. And I saw a picture of him last week up in Cincinnati supporting Joe Burrow. Of course, the Joe
Yeah.
Burrow Foundation is doing work in Louisiana because of his time at LSU, and of course, listen, being a lifelong Bengals fan, we are grateful for the LSU connection in Cincinnati. And you talk about a guy that has transformed a city, Al. If you would go to Cincinnati, Ohio today, you would see Joe Burrow stuff everywhere. It's unbelievable.
Well, I've told you this before, Brian, so I know the listeners will appreciate this. So I've been a lifelong Cowboy fan, and I feel like I still am because I have to be because I'm just kind of loyal like that.
Yep.
But I am a huge Bengal fan. They're who I want to watch. So just so you know, I feel like I'm forced to watch the Cowboys and hope that they do okay. But I enjoy watching the Bengals, and I was super disappointed that they didn't make it back to the Super Bowl this year. But I'm a huge Bengal fan because of that LSU connection. And, you guys are up and coming, which is fun. It's fun to watch.
Well, I was at your house Halloween night, and we were watching the Bengals and the Browns, and that thing got out of hand real quick because the
It was
Bengals
bad.
just played like gar. I was just grateful there was other things to do to distract myself and talk to you and hang out. But here's the thing: they went on a 10-game winning streak after that game,
Right.
so. I think I need to plan a trip to Louisiana for a Monday night game and hang out in your house.
Right.
And they should have been on a 12-game winning streak. That would have mean they would have been Super Bowl champs. But
Yeah.
you know, what can you say? But no, listen, man, you have been great with your time. Listen. I have to ask him about football and things like that. Al literally can talk about anything. He is so good at talking about anything. But as we get out of here this morning, tell folks how they can find the blind trailers, how they can find the Unashamed podcast. Don't forget about he and Lisa's books, Desperate Forgiveness, A New Season, Sister Roar that Lisa was a part of with your mom and your sister-in-laws. But where can they find the blind? Oh, by the way, need to mention alanlisarobertson.com. You guys do a blog there as well. But where can they find the other things that you guys have?
Yeah, you can go to theblindmovie.com, and that's where you get all the information, the current stuff. If you sign up through that website, they'll send you all the information as it unfolds. You can even buy tickets now, I noticed this week, for your local area, which is very supportive and helps us get in more theaters, by the way. So if you really want to go see this film, buy those tickets early. That helps us to get in more theaters around the country. Right now, we're slated to be in over 2,000 theaters. We're super excited about that. So theblindmovie.com. And for Unashamed, anywhere you get podcasts, whether it's, you can watch it on YouTube. We film it. Or you can listen to it on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcast information. But just a great Robertson style Bible study that's trying to impact people's lives. You'll be entertained, but you'll also be blessed and I think uplifted by our discussions.
Well, you absolutely will. And don't forget theblindmovie.com. Go there and find that you can watch the trailer. You can buy tickets. And again, I looked this morning. It is playing in Barbersville at the Huntington Mall at the Cinemark Theater. Not sure if it's playing at Pullman Square. You'd have to search and find out. But again, you can find it, and even you folks in Ashland, if you search, there's a place to search it where you can find a theater near you, and then you can buy those tickets. But I do know it's showing at the Huntington Mall. Al Robertson, you are the absolute best, man. I appreciate your time. Thank you for joining me this morning on the Tom Roten Morning Show.
Always a pleasure, brother.